Today we are continuing our look into the book of Matthew, specifically Jesus' interactions with his disciples, and asking the question, what can we learn from those interactions? What Jesus was trying to teach to his disciples, how does that apply to us today, and what can we learn from that? Last time when we started, we talked about how the first interaction we see is Jesus calling a couple of the disciples, and he calls them out of their fishing boats. And then after that, Jesus, he does a number of healings, and he teaches the Sermon on the Mount. Now, if you haven't studied the Sermon on the Mount, I'd encourage you to go and take some time reading it. Don't rush through it, because there is a lot of content there, but it's a wonderful teaching. It's really important, and it's really good. Also, you can go back into our archive. Pastor Tim did a number of sermons going over the Sermon on the Mount that were very good, so I encourage you to take a look at that. But after the Sermon on the Mount, we have this thing. So Jesus heals some more people, including Peter's mother-in-law. But we're not going to talk too much about that. Instead, we're going to go to the next section. So in Matthew chapter 8, verses 18 to 22, Jesus has an interaction with two potential disciples, and I think one of them actually becomes his disciples. It's not clear there. It doesn't give us their names. But we have two people who come up to Jesus and say that they want to follow him. And he gives them a challenge. And so I'll read the text, and then we'll have a look at it. We'll talk about it. So it reads, starting in verse 18. Now, when Jesus saw a crowd around him, he gave orders to go over to the other side. And a scribe came up and said to him, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." Another of the disciples said to him, "Lord, let me first go and bury my father." And Jesus said to him, "Follow me and leave the dead to bury their own dead." And that's it. That's that interaction that we want to talk about today. And what this is all about is the cost of following Christ. Now, in reality, that's actually kind of what we talked about last week. Jesus called to the disciples to come and follow me, and they got up and they left their past life and their business and their family and certain commitments and things behind in order to follow him. So we talked about that. And so I don't want to lean too much into that side of it, because we've already addressed it, and we've talked about that a number of times in the past. Instead, what I want us to look at is Jesus' side of it. So we have this first guy who comes up, and he calls Jesus teacher, and that's interesting. Well, yes, Jesus was rabbi and he was a teacher, but he was so much more than that. And often when I see people in the text call Jesus teacher, part of me wonders if that is the limit of their understanding of him. And that's fine. They can start seeing him as teacher and then grow to know him for so much more that he is. And he certainly is our teacher. But part of me wonders. Anyways, we don't need to feed into that too much. But he calls him teacher, and he says to him, "I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus basically says this little phrase back to him, which is followed by silence. We don't know what comes of it. Did the scribe continue to follow him? Or did he meet the challenge and see that he wasn't really up to the task? So he says to him, "I'll follow you wherever you go." And Jesus responds by saying, "Foxes have a hole," that's their home. "Birds of the air, they have nests," that's their home. "But the Son of Man," and this is neat, it's the first time that he refers to himself as the Son of Man. But the Son of Man, and he's talking about himself, has nowhere to lay his head. He's telling the scribe, this person who wants to follow him, that he's living a nomadic lifestyle, that he's on the move, that it's not a comfortable route that he's taking. And he's putting this forward to him being up front. He's not doing a bait and switch kind of thing where he would present "Oh yeah, come follow me. It's going to be great. It's going to be comfortable. It's going to be wonderful." And then the guy goes with him, and he's just like, "Wait, are we sleeping in this field tonight? Or are we really going to walk this far today? Or where are we going to eat?" And kind of this uncertainty and uncomfortableness about the journey with Christ that the disciples were venturing on with him, Jesus was very upfront with him and told him the cost, the comfort level, the commitment that he was bringing to him. Then it says that one of the disciples, and that leads me to think, and some commentaries agree, that this person actually did continue to follow Christ. But it says one of the disciples said, "Lord, let me first go and bury my father." It seems like a reasonable request. However, we don't really know. Had his father passed away yet? Did he just die recently? Was he sick and they thought he was soon going to die? Or was he just simply advanced in age and the man thought, I'll wait until my father is gone and then I'll come and I'll follow you? Or there's also some who have this idea that at this time the people would have done this second burial thing a year after the person had passed. They would move them from one tomb to another and this kind of thing. I don't hold to that too much, but it could be an idea. But regardless, he has this idea of, can I first take care of my father, and then I'll come and I'll join you on this quest, on this journey. And Jesus' response is, follow me and let the dead bury the dead. It seems like a harsh response, but once again, Jesus is challenging the man to realize the cost and importance of what it is to follow Christ. That this goes before every other commitment. Now, we are to mourn with those who mourn, and we're to be honorable and respectful to our parents, but my commitment to Christ, me personally, is more important than the son commitment that I have to my father. And he knows that and understands it, but not everyone does. And Jesus is laying this out to the man basically to say that if you are going to follow me, you have to realize that commitment of following me is more important than every other commitment, every other expectation that is put on you, every other thing that you normally go to. If it stands in the way of following me, and at this point it was a physical following, then you got to leave it behind. And why is this so important? It's important for what we talked about last week, that we understand the position that Christ has in our life. But it's also important because so often in evangelism, which is pointing people to Christ, showing the gospel to them, praying for them, teaching them, and hoping to lead them to a point of conversion where they turn their life over to God and become a Christian and follow him. That's evangelism. It's a very important part of Christianity. But so often what people do is they misrepresent what it is to be a Christian. They'll teach things like the health and wealth gospel, this idea that come to Christ and then you'll be healthy and you'll be wealthy and your life will be grand and everything will be good. That's not accurate. The Bible teaches against that, actually. And they do that, or they'll talk about how, come to Christ so that you can be part of this family, and as if that's the main reason, or whatever they do, they misrepresent. They don't give the full story. It's like a car salesman who you go to buy a car, and they tell you all the highlights, but what they don't tell you is that the whole floorboard is rotten out. Now, I'm not to say, obviously, that in Christianity something is rotten out, but it is a severe commitment. It's a commitment that will disturb the normalness of your life. It's a commitment that will rewrite the culture that you live in and the ways about you and the things that you value and find important. It will change how people see you. It should change absolutely everything about your life. And the Bible says that the world will actually hate us because we follow Christ. But don't worry that they hated Christ first. And God's opinion of us is more important than man's opinion of us and all these things. So for us to kind of paint this lovey-dovey, safe and happy picture of Christianity to the world and say, come join us, come join this so that all will be well. Well, no, there will be struggles. There will be problems. You might go through a period of time where God calls you and it's uncomfortable, where it feels like you are wandering and you don't know where your home is next, or you don't know where you're going to eat next, or you don't have those comforts of life that so many depend upon. There's also the idea of, following Christ might mean that you miss certain things that the world thinks is important, or you have to put that relationship with Him above your relationship with others and with family and with all those other things. And sometimes that's more severe than others. For some people, joining the church and becoming a Christian doesn't sever ties with their family. But for some people it does. And Jesus here is saying that to follow Him is to leave all those things behind and recognize the importance of that. And so there's 2 points. There's the point that we made last week of the importance and the value of our relationship with God is so much more important than all these other things. But there's also the point to those of us who are already in the church and are already Christian, that when we present the gospel to people, when we point them to Christ, to paint the whole picture of Christianity, not just some portion to try to get them in the door, and then it's like, oh, it's too late, you're already committed, and also in Christianity, there's this, this, and this. No, paint the whole picture. Give them the whole truth. Show them the level of commitment. Show them the cost, so that they can be prepared. And that when they say they're going to follow Christ, they mean it because they understand what it means to follow Christ. It's very important. I hope that helps you today. And I hope that as we be the light to the world, we represent Him well, and we represent what it means to follow Him well. Have a good week, and may you honor God in all that you do.